This episode is all about real-world use cases of NFT technology. Specifically, probably mostly about digital twins today, as we are still exploring the potential of blockchain technology. In my mind, it becomes increasingly important to differentiate between this is fun, this is nice to have, and this solves real-world problems, and the solution is a better one that's already existing. And so I'm really delighted to discuss this with Christian Adler and Alexis Gamboa from the startup twinu. We're going to discuss this topic, and you guys are Web3 builders, and so I think it's very appropriate to talk about use cases. Hello and herzlich willkommen to the Bernhard Neumann podcast. Here we explore Web3 use cases together and learn from experts and builders in the space. I'm your host Bernhard, and I help branding and marketing professionals to get into Web3 to explore the potential and eventually build products there. And my guests today are Christian Adler and Alexis Gamboa from twinu. And we're going to jump right into it. I think you can introduce yourself much better than I could. I think you both have a really interesting background. And so, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Bernhard.
Yeah, great that you're here. So first of all, if you may introduce yourself and maybe also explain what twinu does, your company. Christian, could you go first?
I can go
first. Who are you?
Yeah, hi, my name is Christian. I'm from background, I'm a computer scientist. I studied technology management and computer science here in Munich, also in the US. Worked long time in consulting afterwards, focusing on topics like digital transformation, AI, and also digital twins. And at some point decided figured out there's way more potential in digital twin technology than we untapped so far. And that's where we are today, using Web3 technology, digital twin technology, in our solutions, focusing on circularity and sustainability today.
Okay, we will unpack that later. Alexis.
So I come originally from Costa Rica.
Nice.
I'm as well a computer scientist, and I started my journey with digital twins and one project that was being developed with EY that was called MEMS, that it was about energy and manufacturing, and how the assets were using the energy and monitoring in one of the early days of digital twins in the industry. And since then I got really interested about this aspect of how the communication works between data silos, and I became very, very excited about the possibilities of what happens when you allow your data to be usable by other parties. And after that, I continued studying. I did my master's in data analysis and engineering, where I went deeper into the technologies that make that possible. And one of the big players, is called semantic web. I would love to discuss more later on the episode. Love to evangelize the aspect of interoperability and breaking data silos. And then started twinu with Christian. On this idea of digital twins that they live in the digital world as they live in the real world, and all the things that unlocks, especially in the topic of traceability and the aspect of circularity, because now it's becoming more important than ever to be able to have that level of traceability that we currently don't have.
So many interesting things. I already have so many questions. But first, I think it would be interesting for the listeners, for the viewers, to understand, what do you do? Twinu, those were a lot of words. How can I imagine this very simply, what's happening with the products you have?
Basically, what our solution does is we're building digital twins for physical products. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in the Web3 world, you would call it tokenization of physical assets. Mm-hmm. And those digital twins have the focus on giving a physical product a digital representation and a digital link to that product over its whole life cycle. So basically we focus on the time when the physical products move over to the customer. where very often they lose that digital representation, because usually in the factory in Industry 4.0 you have all kinds of digital twins, starting in R&D, in the production, in the supply chain. But once the product gets delivered to the customer, if you order something online, you often in the end all you get is like a brown box with the product in there. Manuals are on paper and so on. And your digital ecosystem also doesn't know about it. If you ask a voice assistant about your stuff, they usually don't know about it. And that's what we create, those digital representations, which also bring that link that then is important for topics like circularity and other use cases, where you need some kind of link to the product in a way to also grab the product in the digital world. Also thinking of metaverse in the future at some point.
Yeah, this makes so much sense. Like, it's crazy. Like you would think like do people just also light up when they hear, oh yeah, why? Like, I have my physical product. Of course, I want my customers to also engage on a digital level. Is there many aha moments when you make your tour?
There is many aha moments because companies also, like brands, have tried that all the time also to do that. Like when we're used to in old times to get, when you unbox a product, that you have like a guarantee extension card in there if you register your product. So that was the traditional way, or like the last way in the past to get that link to the customer. Or many brands build apps today. Not because the features always make a lot of sense, and also like we sometimes think like it doesn't really scale. Imagine you have an app on your phone for each product you have, or even just for a fraction of it. But that's a way to add digital experience to products, sometimes features, but also to get a link to the customer, sometimes a direct link, because many brands also don't sell directly to the consumer. So if it goes with resellers and they want to get feedback, also direct feedback from consumers, it's often important to have that back loop somehow and that link to the product. And then when it comes to circularity,
what is circularity for everyone that doesn't know it? For somebody, I had to ask also the first time.
Circularity is one of the biggest transformations our world goes through right now. I mean, we're always talking about digital transformation. That was for many years a topic I was working on and pushing, and still am. But circularity is the big transformation that is basically for many companies now priority number one, because our economy is moving from a linear economy where we used to basically source materials from the ground, from the earth, produce them into products, sell these products to customers. They use it, and at the end of the life cycle of the product, because they don't need it anymore, or the product is broken or outdated, they get landfilled, incinerated, sometimes recycled. Cars, for example, obviously for a longer time already, but many products still end up in literally in the trash. And we realized this doesn't scale anymore. I mean, it has climate impact, but also has a resource impact. The resources aren't endless, and we need to get better in transforming this economy into a circular one, where basically the product moves to the customer from the producer. And there already we work on things like getting utilization up so that products get used more. If you think of like how many cars we have in the city, for example, and how much they are used every day. So circularity also means like bringing up that usage. So we're working on as a service models, sharing economy, these things. Then circularity also means to give products a second life. To make sure when a first owner of the product doesn't need it anymore, that in time it gets transferred to a second owner who maybe still has use of that. Because the more a product is used and the longer, the less products we have to produce in the end. And the last step is obviously to collect these products again, to avoid that they get just like landfilled or incinerated, but to have them trade in, for example. I mean, good examples are Apple, for example, who does this really extensively.
Even though it's not a great deal, I have to mention this. Apple.
And one aspect which is interesting, why are they so good to do that? I mean, obviously, there's many reasons, but one is because they always have that link to the product and the customer. Because it's really hard to use an Apple product without having a link to Apple, because if you go to a shop and want to trade it in, or even online, they immediately can recognize the product and they know what product they're talking about. So you have to collect them in the end, and then to make sure you recycle, you take the parts out again. or even refurbish them. Yeah, many products you can refurbish. I just bought my daughter a refurbed phone, for example, from this brand, and I must honestly admit the customer experience and the experience is basically the same. So we don't even think about it anymore. And before, like, oh, they had some, like, who knows what it's going to look like, and so on. So this is circularity and the transformation our world, the industry, but also us as a customer are going through.
I'm sold. Like it doesn't seem just like a buzzword, another one, but like this makes sense, I guess, in every single way. And so Alexis, I wanted to get back to, you said interoperability, you said data silos, and Christian, what you just mentioned is like, maybe we don't want for every product, we want an app, like maybe there's an easier way. We have one app or a couple, but not, okay, I have a vacuum cleaner, here's an app. I have this, here's an app. And so how does Web3 tie into this?
Oh, that's, I love it. I just love the topic because I hate to install apps, right? I'm one of that person that was installing every single app that could imagine. To the moment where the phone becomes unusable, especially if it's Android, and it's like, why do I need an app for every single thing where every experience is new? I have to learn. I have to go through the learning curve of each one of the apps, and most of the times it's really not worth it. Sometimes it's more of a shoehorn app. Well, I just want to be able to keep track of the things I have, or maybe I want to be able to communicate with the devices directly. One of the very interesting things of Web3 that goes directly into that, and I don't see this being discussed so often. One example, if you ask me as a developer, you need to make a function that lives in the internet, and it has to work in 10 years' time, right? If you have to do that today, it is very challenging because you have to think, okay, where do I host it? How do I make sure that in 10 years it's still going to be operable? How do I know that still the access is going to be? There's not going to be an update that is going to disable that function. If I have a function, if I have a device that connects to the internet and it uses some kind of app to know if it should alight, that it should be on or off, and you tell me your life depends on that function being able to operate 10 years in the future, I will say today I will do it with blockchain, right? Because there are two aspects, right? First of all, if you put that function and that data in the blockchain, you know that at least I'm willing to bet that there is a higher chance that smart contract is still being operable 10 years in the future in one consolidated blockchain. Let's call it Ethereum, let's call it Polygon. And if I do it in a server, high chances are in 10 years somebody's gonna forget to pay something and it's gonna go off, or the access to that function is gonna get broken because the browser updates and now it looks broken at the time to operate.
Or the company doesn't run.
Or the company goes out of business.
The servers go down.
And now you have you had that problem, right, with this robot? What's its name?
They still exist again. I won't mention the name. It's like a little nice play robot, which is an AI robot, and suddenly, out of surprise, the company went out of business, and basically I had an expensive piece of garbage at home, and luckily they were taken over a couple of months later, and the servers came up again, and the device started working again. So the idea of what Alexis described, of kind of like this distributed operating system that runs independently of a single producer, operator, manufacturer, can in some cases also increase trust for example, startups building hardware, because they often get the question, if I buy your product and you go out of business in a year, like what's going to happen to my hardware? For sure.
Yeah, I just said this. Continue. I didn't want to.
Oh, good. I know the topic is.
It's a big topic, anyways.
And then, so that is one topic, right? That is basically analogous to anything that you will put in a server. And then there is a part of the user interface, right? Where you say, well, if you want to be able to let's say you have a server where you can turn on and off a light remotely, you still need that last step of how do you interact with the server to the end user. And this is the part that I really like of Web3 as well, because, you know, right now it's on the basic stuff like transferring, like if the process of minting, the most common functions are made in such a way that if today I want to transfer an NFT, I have a plethora of options to do it from the UI perspective, because I can do the same as I can do it in Rarible, I can do it in OpenSea, because it's the same standard, right? And the UI changes. Everyone is free to adapt their own UI to that function. But at the end, what matters is, well, if you have the right wallet, you're going to be able to do it. And they are just a middleman that helps you to do that. So in this example, if that backend, if that server, or if that distributed operative system is basically accessed by any other third party can build on top of it, and then the end user can interact with it through any of the clients that they want, that is simply huge, because the data and the functionality is standardized, and then that last mile, it doesn't matter. So in the case of the light that I was giving, it might be that I made an app or a UI where you can interact with it with a contract to turn it on and off, or to transaction it. But then I got out of business. But you have then two options: or you use any other third party that builds that interface for you, because the function is still there and alive, or even open source libraries that do it. You can do it yourself. You don't depend on the company or the creator of that hardware to be able to operate and to function with it. And this is what we talk, about why interoperability is so important, especially in the topic of circularity. We want to extend the life cycle of our products.
Very interesting. Do people care enough that, like, hey, wait a second, what if this company goes out of business? Because I buy the stuff, okay, I guess it doesn't work anymore. Or do you see a real problem there?
That's a good point. That obviously depends on experience people had, on the products. We think this is going to increase, because more and more products get connected and come with an app, and often depend completely on this app. So these cases will happen more and more. We all are used to that. We know one case, which is our cell phones. We're basically all depending on how long the phone manufacturers or the operating system suppliers think they should support your or my phone. And when they start doing updates or call it like end of life, basically, then it's time for us to buy a new one. And this is where we have that already, because we're depending on these central cloud servers and the software and all that. Sometimes you can keep using the product because it just doesn't get the updates anymore. But sometimes if you don't have the app, or the app is not there anymore, it doesn't work. I had several products of that already.
Okay.
Often toys, where basically then the app is not available anymore, and then you couldn't use it. But that's just one example. Other examples, or why we also focus so much on the interoperability, is because we believe for circularity to work in the end, it needs a win-win-win, basically. Obviously, the win of circularity is the climate impact, to reduce it. Second win needs to be the customer needs benefits from products that are more circular. Because if we're all honest, we all talk about sustainability, we like it, we say it's super important, but when it comes to physical products, in the end, often the price or the features are deciding. So obviously, if it's like same level, then sustainability comes in too, but the mass market always goes by price and features. So we believe circular products need to be better. And with digital twins, our aim is, and we achieved that already in several cases, to make products better with a digital twin, create this link, this digital representation that you as a customer would say like, oh cool, this product with a digital twin is a better product. It gives me more features, also more trust, more value, more second-hand value when I want to sell it, for example. So I prefer that. And then you have a third win, which is for the producer, because circularity often, or sustainability in general, gets related to cost and limitations, right? Like we always have, or often have in mind, like it means like doing less, and spending more money on more expensive resources and so on. But circularity needs to also mean for producers, for brands, new business models, more revenues from business models like sharing economy as a service models. participating in second-hand markets, for example. Because this is a good example. If you think as a producer, you're today in a linear economy, you're making money, profits, revenues by producing more products and selling them. So your interest in that your products have a strong second-hand market and get handed on to second and third customers is kind of low, because you would prefer to sell new products to them. But if you find a way that the brands can participate in these revenue streams in the second-hand market by, for example, running their own online second-hand market where they get transaction fees, or if you take from the NFT space, the royalties by participating in if a product gets moved on to someone else because the second buyer gets certain services and benefits then, and you as a brand again get some revenue, then your interest in, okay, let's extend the product lifetime of the product starts kicking in. And this is this win-win-win.
It's a nice alignment for sure. I was wondering, like, how do you guys think about that? That always comes to my mind. So we have these apps now. Everyone has their app. You know, Adidas has their app, Nike has their app, and now let's say we do it with blockchain, open blockchains, and those accounts are NFTs or like wallets, and with the NFTs in them. How do you think about, like, hey, I'm Adidas. I don't want Nike to know who my customers are, right? Like, obviously it doesn't say the name on it, but it's a wallet that I can somehow ping and see if I can get business from there. How do you guys think about that?
There's difference. You can take different views on that. Like one would be, as a strong brand, you can always say, like, well, I shouldn't care, because if I believe my products are superior and better, then my customers gonna stay with me and stay with my products. I even take my customers like use them to tell the world. Yeah, I mean, often if you as another brand want to know who's the customer, you have many ways, right? I mean, often brands use them for reviews. There would be today already ways to do that, but obviously there's information you might not naturally want to put transparent all over or in the blockchain, especially in a very analytic way that it's easy to analyze it and to target, for example. Then there's technical solutions also to that. I mean, you can use private blockchains or encryption or for it always depends on the use case. We always come from like this, or the problem, as you just stated it, like from what's the problem, what do we have to ensure, and what is the use case that needs to be done, and then the technology is done in a specific way. So we have digital product passport is a good example that we work on. Companies need these digital twins as a passport for their products, which the EU is starting to put as a regulation that from a certain time on, like starting with car batteries, they need to have this persistent digital product passport, which contains, for example, information about how to recycle that product, but also what is the material mix, what is in there in valuable but also maybe dangerous materials. So obviously this is important for the recycler in 10, 20 years to get access to that information. But you as a producer don't want today that anyone or everyone in the blockchain can just read that information and knows your material mix, because that's IP, that's intellectual property. And blockchain by itself, I mean, it's cryptography, right? So it's crypto. It's about encrypting things. So there's all the means to encrypt information that should not be public. Also the wallets, you do not immediately know who's the owner, so it's often an advantage, because today if you want this link to the customer, it's always about the customer. So if a brand needs to keep the link to your product, to your vacuum cleaner, you need to register with your email address. Why? I mean, basically the link to the product should be enough, and with the digital twin as an NFT, you have the link to the product, but you don't have to necessarily share personal information about you, because it's about the product. So different views on that, and also different ways of how this can be solved, and it can be solved. That's the important news.
Cool. Alexis?
From my side, I am very supportive of open data, of share as much as you possibly can, because there is always this fear, right? There is, and this happens even within organizations. And that is also a bit of a, I mean, with GDPR you also have incentives to only use strictly the data that you need. But from my perspective and from my experience, there is a lot of value that is locked by this fear sometimes, just because fear of the unknown, of, oh, what if this becomes more transparent? What if this data becomes more public? Well, what usually happens, what most of the times what happens, is that it enables new cases and unlock new value. And in this, just as an example, if we talk about now you have any shoe that you buy will come with the NFT, and you have them in your wallet, and all the NFTs have the data about those shoes and its characteristics, and let's say also your clothes, your fashion. Anyone can build a startup about making a recommender engine where you simply put your wallet, and it immediately can make very accurate recommendations of, first of all, how can you combine them, or what products might you buy next, because it really knows the things that you have down to the detail. And the exception with the current approach, where is, well, if you buy things from Adidas recommends you more Adidas product. In this case, you can make it independent of the brand, and you build it once, and it works for all of the product category. So this is one of the examples of value that you unlock, and why you will like actually this data to become available. This was the same discussion with airplane security, right? Where airlines didn't want to share a lot of information about accidents, and then they were basically forced to do it, and they found out how much of a difference it made on flying security and safety when they were able to share across them the information about the accidents and learn about, oh yeah, look, there is a pattern here with this model, and it was a net positive, right? And so I am a big fan of free flow of information. Of course, where it makes sense, there is always places where you want to obscure some of the data because it brings more harm than benefit. But I am a bit old Google in that aspect and default to open every time that is possible.
Yeah, that's a good point. Just one add. Sometimes you also exaggerate how important the protection of that data is. Just think of how a product, for example, the information about the parts and what's all in there, where many brands are really scared of like what their competitors could do with that information. Honestly, if you want to today know what a product is, what the parts of a product are, you just buy the product and you take it apart, right? I mean, it's differences of course, like the digitalization. It's much easier than to on-chain do that and analyze it. But in many cases, it's if someone wants the information, it's available today too.
Yeah, for sure. I really love how you, like, obviously this was a critical question, but there's so much to be gained. There's so much positive here. And I really liked how you underlined it because, I mean, what I heard is for the customers, there's many benefits. You're more free of a certain service, of a certain brand, because anyone can build a service on top of blockchain assets, on top of blockchain entries. And yeah, I think it's just like, if you embrace it as a company, then also more sharing. I think there's probably gonna be so many good benefits that you wish you had done it sooner, probably. And so that leads me to the question: how's this whole thing perceived by the industry? I know you were with some automotive companies lately. Like, what's the sentiment here? How's your product received, really? Mm-hmm.
Sentiment is very well. We're talking with several industries, different industries, also very different industries in terms of like pain points and where it comes to circularity, and also different in their products. Sometimes we're surprised where the pull came from. As you mentioned, we're in talks also in automotive. Just this week, we're at a big event where we talk to automotive OEMs and also suppliers. So circularity for all of them is obviously a big topic. When it comes to technology, the good news is they're super open. So blockchain is not, as you might sometimes as a startup, when you think about doing blockchain, that you might think like, okay, this is a no-go topic maybe sometimes for a company. It's not at all. They all engage in blockchain in this or the other way, depend on different use cases. And digital twins in any way, because automotive industry is used for a long time. They were one of the first ones, if you think of crash test and CAD, to build digital twin models of their cars and crash these instead of building real cars, which already was kind of like sustainability and circularity, right? And cost saving. So we see sometimes that win-win-win works very well if you crash cars first on a computer before you do it with a real one. And and then there's industries also, like, for example, furniture, where I mean, furniture we use is also a big sustainability topic, because it's a lot of volume, less electronic often, but even furniture gets more and more electronic, so you have more materials in there. Recycling gets more important, because so far furniture gets usually, like, at the end of life cycle, they go to a collection place and not really separated. That's the industry. Consumer electronics, especially, it's a very interesting industry because of also how valuable the ingredients are. Yeah? The market we are in today also changed in a way that another win for brands, for producers, is to get materials back. Yeah? While it meant cost in the past to get a product back, because then you had to recycle it. We have also discussions where producers tell us, our product now became a value for us to get it back, because, for example, it contains a lot of aluminium, and aluminium prices skyrocket in a way that we actually want the products to get back, and we need to find a way to trace the product, keep a link, and somehow get it back, because we're running out of aluminium, or it's just expensive.
Yeah, very cool. Like that's interesting that they're open to the blockchain. To them is Web3 a buzzword, or is it in their thoughts? Oh yeah, this type of data infrastructure is gonna happen. We want to be part of this, or do they rather like focus? Hey, what can you do with this for me? You know, like, and what really does it do for me right now? And there might be a Web3 or might not be a Web3.
From our discussions, I can say there's all ways of that. There's cases where brands want to engage in Web3, and then you ask, like, what do you want to do, and then it's like, you tell us. Yeah? So it's like starting with the hammer and then looking for the nail. Yeah. And you have that in other areas too. I had it even in my consulting life. You had it with AI a lot. Yeah, that companies wanted to engage in AI, and it's a good thing. It's not wrong. It's like because sometimes you find pain points or problems you can solve if you try to see if a new technology could be a solution there, and you just cannot do that for a long time, because at some point you have to start thinking from pain points and use cases again. And also, as a startup, you cannot run around for a long time with a hammer looking for a nail, but you can test. It's agile testing, and this is what happens. That's very often also driven by marketing, for example, that companies say, like, we want and need to get engaged in these technologies. But in many cases, it's really use case driven, and the technology is not in the first place, but the openness is very high to Web3 and blockchain today. Yeah.
Cool. Alexis, maybe you're also more the technical guy. For what you guys want to do, like this digital twin thing seems so obvious, right? And like making a physical project also available digitally. Do we need the blockchain for that? Do we need NFTs for that? Or could you just come up with a nice database and everyone is happy?
Yeah, we thought about it. So we actually started as specifically in digital twins, right? We didn't start as a Web3 startup. We didn't start with blockchain. And we came to the point where we said, okay, we understand the key aspect of interoperability. They need one of the important things of digital twins, and why most companies use it today is so that they can share them with other systems, and they have a common understanding of what it represents. So, but there is one big challenge that we had, specifically technical and practical challenge, that was, how do we handle the ownership and who is able to modify it and who has access to it to make changes to it? How do we do that? Because trying to think, oh, we're just going to make a big database and say we are the database that is saying who owns what products and who made what products, and you gotta trust us, was a big, this is just not feasible, right? This is how you become that. It just makes no sense. And here is where actually Christian was the one that was bringing the topic of Web3.
And I was critical of blockchain before.
This has to be noted here, everyone.
Yeah, we all. Right?
I wasn't.
And started to think, hey, there is this thing of NFTs, and there's this thing with blockchain where basically could potentially solve the problem of the trust issue. And then we started to look deep into it, because basically it started as a discussion of, okay, let's try to find the hole on why blockchain doesn't work for us and why blockchain doesn't solve this problem for us. And it was a very critical discussion where, after trying to poke holes everywhere, we said, currently this is the best solution we have to solve our problem of how do we bring our twins out there in a way that then how to transfer them, who has the ownership of it. It's not, you don't need to trust us for that. And this is the specific pain point that we said, okay, we need this. And any other serious attempt at open digital twins need to involve blockchain technology to be able to do that. Specifically because we were thinking of this of what happens when we go to a company and we make the digital twins, and they say, well, what happens if Twino goes out of business? You're a startup after all. And say, what happens to my twins? They just disappeared. All the links are broken now. And here is where it just fits so well. And there is also another reason, and another case where blockchain is becoming more apparent to be a great solution, and it's in the case of the digital product passport. Because, so this is part of the legislation that is coming into the European Union and is being discussed. It's going to start with batteries and fashion in the following years, where basically you have the product and then you have a digital passport of the products, which it contains all the information of its origin, manufacturer, year of production. And this information had to outlive the product, and this information has to be in a way that that is openly accessible, and that it is immutable, or that you cannot easily manipulate it without keeping a record of it, and it has to be really, really persistent. And how do you do that? Well, you have two options. You have one very big database of the European Union, where you just trust them and you have to make everything through them. Or you have something like blockchain, and they are actively looking at blockchain, because even if the data layer ends up in something like IPFS, or let's say something more permanent like Airwave, that's a perfect way to do it. You do it there, you know that it's going to be there for a very, very long time, and it's not the same as, oh, we're going to trust your company to keep those links alive. Even 10 years you go out of business.
Yeah, such a good point. I didn't really think of this whole longevity thing before, but it makes perfect. And also, I mean, you are handing the companies you work with an asset, right? That they can use independently of you, basically. Yes. Like if you're not the perfect provider anymore, they might go somewhere else. Or if you, whatever happens to you, that's so much less third-party risk. Yeah, it should sell itself, I guess. that is I'm sold. So I would like to switch to the use cases of what you're doing. Like maybe we touched on some, but like what's the dream world you guys see where your product is used and where it's so useful in all those different aspects of life? Like. Yeah. What do you see here? Like, where is this going to be used?
Probably a good thing is to elaborate a bit on the vision, how we started, basically, because that describes kind of like this world that we envision and what it can do. And it's independent from us and our product. So basically, we were thinking of how should it be in a couple of years. And one example we always had is like, why is it not possible today, and shouldn't it be possible that we as consumers, for example, sell things that we don't need anymore, but maybe someone else would need simply by giving our voice assistants a command saying like, sell my bike on the internet or sell my old TV on the internet.
I hate it, sell it. Oh, no, wait, I was drunk.
Exactly. Of course, you have a few steps in between that. But if you think today how time consuming that is, like using these known platforms of like selling you stuff and that often like we do it a lot at home because for us it's really important to give the things a second life before they don't have a meaning or value for anyone anymore, because if you keep them in the basement for a couple of years, then in the end they're not useful anymore. So the earlier you do that, the better, but often the frictions are quite high. So if the product doesn't have enough value, it's like and then there's other cases of you where we always say like probably in a normal house like this one here, might be 50 apartments in that in a block, for example, and probably there's at least 50 drilling machines, because you need them once a year.
I hear them, yes. Exactly. I can hear them.
So there's also potential for sharing if these things are known. So our vision was like, why shouldn't it not be just possible that your digital ecosystem knows of your assets and can also grab them even if they're not digital, so that you can say like to sell something online. And we got there by enabling features. You were asking for features that you as an end user, if you have a digital twin of a product today, with 2 clicks can put that on eBay Kleinanzeigen, for example, without having to type in all the information and look for it and find out is it this model or that model. And next step would be then that the voice assistant or the AI connects online and checks the prices for your product, because it knows what TV you're going to sell. It knows how often you used it. Or let's take a washing machine. It knows what model it is, how old it is, what you once paid for it, when you bought it, how often you used it, and then can compare like prices of that, decide on a price, and then it's obviously going to ask you like, is it okay if I put that online for this and that price? And you say like, yeah, do that, and a few days later it gets picked up. And if you think how many frictions and how complicated that process is today, just finding out the model often of a device, because they're often not called, the number is often a bit longer than the one what the product says. So that's one of the use cases or the visions that we had. And why? I mean, obviously, this itself is not a killer use case that changes our world.
It's
just
pretty
one
cool
example.
already, to be honest.
It's an example. It's hard to monetize. But it shows the power of this interoperability, how like different applications could suddenly work together on physical assets and convenience, and how this could and there's other examples of interoperability of this digital product passport, of the recycler later, or the brands having information on the usage of the product. So when they get it traded in, we talk to companies that often say like, well, the trade-in and refurbishment needs to be super efficient, because you cannot afford to spend much time on identifying the product and all that, because it's a used product and you want to resell it. So it needs to be more efficient it needs to be cheaper in the end than the new product. So these are the features. That's the vision. And why, in order to free up time of customers, to do other things, and to save resources, because products are more likely to get a second life, are more likely to be shared, like the drilling machines in the building. If you could just ask a voice assistant, can you send someone in my proximity who has a drilling machine a request if I can borrow it, without knowing the person maybe, so conserving privacy, then this would be something. Or creating, with our technology, you could even create a car sharing economy with our solution without having an intermediary, where people could just get together and share cars without having one central instance that operates that.
I love this. This is, I'm not sure if, is this the Internet of Things, but in a different way, right? Because I think what you mentioned, like the first eBay Kleinanzeigen thing, like it's so practical. Yes, that's exactly why there's stuff laying around here that I never use. And like the AI could say, hey, you haven't been using this in 200 days. Yeah. Do you still want to have it? And then I say,
that's
no,
a good idea.
Like, you know, like I have my Xbox, for example, like I bought it, got excited. It's in there for at least a year. Like someone could still play it.
Value goes down every year.
Exactly.
Usage value.
Hey, dear sir, and I would say, no, please sell it for me, you know, and that makes sense. So my comparison to Internet of Things, is that any close or?
Yes, definitely. That's also projects and topics I worked on in consulting. So basically I worked on the intersection of AI, digital transformation in general, AI, IoT, blockchain, and in the beginning these topics are often worked on in silos or seen as silos. And that's like, we need to do something with blockchain, with Web3, with AI. But obviously in this case, the sum of the parts is going to be way bigger than what we see today. So having AI operating on data on the blockchain is a huge potential. Being voice assistants, being able to grab digital twins of products, which are in itself interoperable with other products. If you think how complex it is today to connect IoT devices in your own,
I imagine, yes.
How many accounts, and because of security, right? Because obviously each of these products work in a silo, are protected, have their own APIs and all that, and it needs to work together. Smart contracts are the perfect technology to create a long chain of interoperability between even different players, where once this is validated and tested and works, that it's really hard to break that and also way easier to maintain it.
And to me, that lets me think, you know, like there is those aggregators like Amazon, like I have some Internet of Things and like they come together in that app. But then again, you make yourself obviously dependent on Amazon, which most people won't care. But also the small ones that might not get the contract with Amazon or something, they're like cornered out. So I feel like that's nice for competition to open it up and everything. But that was just a side thought. Alexis, I have a question for you. So I think this sounds awesome. Like we have this digital representation and everything is good. I sell my Xbox and everything, but I still have it physically here. Or I don't have it physically here, right? Because I lost it or whatever. Like how is this solved? Like how is it practically working when we have this image of in the future, hey Siri, sell my Xbox? Like what's gonna happen here? How does Siri know I still have my Xbox? It's still working and all this. How do you guys think about that?
So currently. This is a question that we get very often, right? Because people think, okay, there is a digital entity, there is a physical entity. How does that bridge works? Funny enough, when you think about how strong do you need that link to be and what it enables, you find out that only in very specific cases you need a very strong link between the digital entity and the physical entity. For most of the use cases and most of the value, is enough to have the reference, right? So let's say you have a car that has a VIN number and you have an NFT that comes from the wallet of the manufacturer and it's referencing that VIN number. And for most cases, that reference, it's enough. Because, well, there already you have a proof. You can make sure that there is no another one with the same VIN number. And if you try to use the NFT for something, let's say you have a watch and you're trying to put it in an official marketplace. Yes, there is a risk that you don't have the watch anymore, but this risk is limited. It's not like you're going to start to selling a lot of fake watches with that NFT. This is only it's already limiting the reach of that or the damage the impact that might have. And this is because it's a little bit like the Oracle problem, where at the end of the day, any mechanical link that you attach to a physical product can be, with enough investment, can be
tampered with,
right? Yeah. So you can say, I have a perfect sticker that has this kind of technology, so you make sure it's impossible to replicate. Well, you can cut the piece of the product, put it in the other product. Like there is always going to be a mechanic way to do that. But again, We currently what we do is we talk with the brands and we discuss, okay, how strong does this link needs to be, and it adapts to the type of product. It depends a lot. So let's say in the case of how we have been handling in the case of fashion, we propose, well, there you can put there are NFC chips that go into the textile, so that basically that NFC already has a reference directly to its NFT. Or if it's with a product that maybe it's not that valuable, that connection is super strong, can be a QR code that already links it to itself. So this is how it works today, especially with offline products, let's say. How we see it in the future as more products get more and more connected, and we also have an example of this, is if the product has some kind of connectivity, the product already knows what twin or what NFT relates with itself, right? So let's say I have an NFT with a serial number of a coffee machine, and the coffee machine, the moment it connects to the internet, it immediately knows which twin it relates to, right? And any update, it already knows where to send them. Mm-hmm. And any change to that NFT as well, the machine is gonna replicate it. Let's say it gets stolen, and then the owner of the NFT can lock it, and now every time it to be used, it needs to connect and make sure that the twin the NFT is enabled. I said, no, wait, I got stolen. The owner has to unlock me. If not, I'm not gonna work, right? So that connectivity can make this link way stronger. And this is something that we actually have been playing a bit around the coffee machine in the office. Every time someone makes a coffee machine, its NFT, the metadata of its NFT updates, and the update gets written in the blockchain, so you can always see all the updates that had happened. Every time a coffee is made, that twin keeps track of the coffee machine, so we always know when someone is making coffee at the office.
I love it.
So if we would resell the coffee machine soon, we could kind of like prove via that, kind of like with a car, the mileage, how new it is. And in the beginning, we even, like, our coffee machine started twittering, like when it was used, instead we turned that off. So
I love this. You
can connect that with metaverse. We had we had implemented a proof of concept that, if as an influencer, for example, where you often, like, influencers have to do with brands, and if they would be supported by a certain brands, their avatar in their social media could change to an avatar who drinks like a coffee or wears the clothes they're wearing that exact day, to keep in sync. So digital twin can also be your avatar or in the metaverse. So this is where these IDs can create a link between physical assets and the digital world.
Love it. Now, funny, for some reason, every time I talk to you, you mention a coffee machine. Now I know. now I know. And so, I would be interested. So with that journey, I mean, I could talk for hours probably. Was there something in recent months where you changed your mind about? Like you say, okay, we thought this would work out this way, but actually the problem is a different one. We have to solve it a different way. Was there anything that comes to mind where you changed your mind about how to approach solving a problem with your products? Mm-hmm.
Maybe speaking for myself, one topic is we always from the beginning had sustainability and use cases around that as a strong topic, but as one of many, and that has changed a lot. Yeah? That we also from the talks with the companies, yeah, that we see like that the problems that are solved there, especially now with circularity, and this is where the highest impact is, and this comes first. And then all these nice to have features that we talked about, like being able with your voice assistant to sell something, or having your coffee machine being connected and being able to prove how often it has run, which is nice to have features, but the pain points there are not as big as if it is connected and combined. And that's where we see the win-win. And this was for me personally like the biggest eye opener, that this win-win-win of like the sustainability topic, the also making products better and also the benefits for the customer, that this can really like work together and work out. While we in the beginning more like try to tackle these topics separately, and see like, okay, you need, as a startup, you often have to decide, make very hard decisions and decide on a niche, right? Like to conquer a certain topic and not several. But here we saw like how these topics go together and go along, and are
cool.
joined together.
Alexis, anything in for you, or many things for you? I don't know.
I think I'm in the same boat.
Voice assistant, true. It is a close call with your name.
Yeah, that happens a lot at the office as well, especially when you have three devices. I think I'm in the same boat as Christian in this aspect of focusing, because there are so many things that you can do, right? And there are so many also cool things that you can do, but you always have to think what is the. It's not about coolness. It's not, and this happens a lot of blockchain, right? It's like, I can make this that is super nice and super cool and super interesting and it has not been done before. But that doesn't mean that people need that right now. Yeah. And right now, especially in the economic environment that we are, you have to focus on the pain points, right? On how this solves an immediate problem. There are cases where you can say, well, this thing doesn't solve a problem, but it brings a lot of value, and it opens new revenue streams, or it opens new opportunities. But right now we're focusing more on, let's look at the pain points directly that we can immediately solve with the twins. And this has come from the feedback that we've got from the companies and the brand. And circularity comes is a topic that is just becoming more and more and more relevant. And also we see it like with things, when you were asking some time before about if you think like people care a lot about if the company is out of business or they lose support of their products and they cannot use them anymore, I think I'll risk and say yes. There is a big increase in this movement of right to repairability, where basically they looked for, in the US also in Europe, where they look to extend the life cycle of the products. And there are problems right now there that things like the digital twins can help to support. So this has been one of the things that we said, maybe not changing, but more like, okay, we have to give up a bit on the cool use cases and focus more on the things that are solving problems right now. And this has been a bit of the shift on the latest ones.
Very cool.
Still believing in blockchain. That has to
Let's
change.
go, Bitcoin. Yeah, cool. Thank you. So I forgot to ask earlier, just real quick, really, because it's just such a interesting topic to me. Authenticity, like obviously, like you mentioned it already a little bit. How close can we get with the technology you guys have with NFTs really linking to physical products? How good is that gonna be?
With authenticity, we're pretty far today, and basically many things are solved. And let's say an NFT-based digital twin is already today a better authenticity solution than many existing solutions, which are in many cases simply paper-based, or you get a little plastic card. So things that are quite easy to fake or to change, also to tamper with. And very often impossible for someone, if you sell a product, for example, across borders, you offer something online, be it an expensive watch, or as it could be your phone or something, it's really hard to prove remotely to someone else that you own an authentic product, because holding a piece of paper in the camera doesn't prove anything. But having a digital certificate that someone can validate via the wallet request or something like that is a way better solution. Because you can, for example, save the intermediary. In many areas, we still have intermediaries as market intermediaries that then get the product, they validate it, they prove it's authentic, that the other person owns it, and they take like 20-30% of the price to then forward it on to the buyer, because otherwise they wouldn't trust each other. Trust is often like that blockchain criteria. That's one thing. Obviously, you don't solve everything with that. So basically, you could still sell a product where you have the digital twin with the NFT off, but you lost the product, for example. So that's still possible, but one thing that Alexis already mentioned, you can only do this once. So it takes the scale out of fraud. Yeah?
Exactly.
Most people, I mean, we wouldn't do that, but someone who wants to do like online fraud wouldn't think of like just doing that once. That person wants to do that several times. But each time this person would need to get access to an NFT. And those NFT are not fakeable. So compared to a piece of paper or a plastic card, this is a pretty safe thing. Maybe one aspect where we're also not there yet is obviously the customer journey, the customer experience. This is nothing we focus on, or we focus on in our scope, but obviously the whole topic of wallets, of how requests are done, of that stuff. This is where many other ventures are working on, and which definitely has to get better for mass adoption, that more people can use NFT technology without being necessarily become a blockchain expert. And that's often how it starts with technology, right? Like if you probably wanted to drive the first car, you needed to be a car expert. Today, you don't want to understand how an engine works to be able to drive a car, and the same is with many other technologies. And the internet in the beginning was the same. When I started with the internet, it was something for people that were interested in computer science.
For sure. Yeah, love it. So two more questions. I'm really interested in entrepreneurship. Also talk a lot about it. You guys are an unlikely team. I don't know. Maybe you are. Maybe you're not. Like you're a former Big Four consultant, right? And you come out of university, a techie person. How has that been to be co-founders, but have a quite different background?
That's a good point. And we have a third co-founder, Plamen, who sends greetings, but couldn't be here today. And he also worked in the consulting industry as me, like also for 15 years, and even worked afterwards many years in a large tech e-commerce company. So you're right. There is, at least in this aspect, some diversity in our team, but we think that's a power, because Alexis brings this deep tech experience and expertise of like current technology and how to be. I always call him the Costa Rican Schweizer Taschenmesser, because whatever needs to be solved, he can solve that. While I am a computer scientist too, but I'm so far away from like really implementing stuff, I couldn't do that anymore. So for myself, just founding a venture like that wouldn't work, because I couldn't really I can think this stuff, and I think Plamen and me bring a lot of advantage in our experience from like how ecosystems work, how business models can work, this use case drivenness coming from use cases, what is always important in consulting, and also being able to interpolate the technology and the whole ecosystem into the future, to try to identify where is this going to go and lead to, in order to not just play with technology and make like nice fancy stuff, but go in the direction of like where this is likely to go. Maybe
how's it for
you have something
Alexis?
to add or see different.
You have some two fancy schmancy consultants here as your co-founders,
which is not always easy.
So I have not seen that combination that often. So it might be that it's not the common mix, but at least from my perspective, it has been a very nice experience, because there is always things that you can learn from the different party, and being able to have their experience with, let's say, maybe not my naiveness, but with this high experimentation that I'm familiar with, or that I really enjoy, and being able to have that this flexibility in the tech part. Of okay, what can we do, and bring on experiences of cases that they already have worked on, or they already have seen firsthand, helps a lot, because in the moment that we have to take decisions, and also technical decisions, I'm like, okay, this is what is possible. Does this make sense on the real world? And being able to basically backtest this with 30 years of cumulative experience in the industry is very helpful to trim down on some of the decisions that we make. So it has been an interesting journey. Of course, it also forced me to when I make proposals and also on their side to be able to defend them very well. But I think it has worked well, especially because Christian, both Christian and Plamen are open to innovation. It has been the thing that they have been doing for latest years. They're not like, no, this is the industry standard, we should follow it, but more like, this is the industry standard, we should disrupt it, what can we do differently? So in that way, we have been able to align on that and work together.
Perfect. Cool. Very cool.
Let me add one thing. What combines us, or basically what is for any startup the important aspect is like a joint passion for the topic and for what you're doing. So in the end, age, background, everything doesn't matter, but a co-founder team needs the same passion for a topic they're doing, and this is where we have a huge overlap and why we can push this. And what the advantage maybe of this constellation is also with also age difference. I mean, probably what you were going to point, or what the point is.
No. That's on you, Christian. That's on you. Sorry.
But the key difference between two of us co-founders is the let's call it like longer work experience and more gray hair. To a startup, as we always have it in mind. A startup we always have this picture of like co-founders that are recently from university and are young and are doing the first and the second and the third one, and which two of us obviously are not. But the advantage of that is like, for us it was always clear, if we do something, we're going to do something with a very strong vision, with a also much higher risk, because once you are already in your work life and proceeded a little bit, you're not gonna stop that and work on a startup that tries to tackle like the most obvious topics. You try to tackle things where you need this experience, where you need to have seen a lot of things, and where you believe like this is gonna be difficult for others to tackle that come from maybe fresh from university. And are also willing to do that, and we believe more should be willing to do that. It's a bit of it shouldn't be a surprising thing or we shouldn't always think startups need to be younger people. Why aren't there more people that do a startup maybe in their 50s and even if it doesn't work out, go back into job? I think that's the next step of what our society needs to be open to, that this is also part of a career plan, not just in the beginning. There we had a hard time many years ago to accept that people like maybe failed in a startup and then went into work life. Now we should also like push more also as a country to promote that with all the experience and expertise that people in companies gained with and also go out. And we have it in many areas.
Makes total sense.
The typical inventors that we have that we think of, they're usually, you think of like older also like experts sometimes, because you need to have done some research and scientific work.
Perfect. I mean, makes sense. It makes it only better, right? Like you have young guns and experienced people. I mean, that makes total sense. I would build a team like that if you could, probably. Last question. It's everyone gets it. The one that's not first here has some time to think about it. It's the Tim Ferriss question that I like to borrow. And so maybe with regards to your job, Web3 or whatever it is, but it could be also personal. You have this big billboard and it's on top of the city. Everyone can see it. Like it's a nice billboard. What would you write on it? What's the message you want to pass on? What do you want people to think about? Maybe Christian first, or if you want to, whoever wants to go first, what would be your message?
The first thing that came to my mind spontaneously is like what I always think is like, which is independent from what we do now, but more like a personal value I see is like, be the change you want to see in the world. So we very often talk too much about like, we should do this or that, but then if we only do it and others don't do it, like how does it work? Like just what you think, what your values are. If you think like the world should be more sustainable, should be more circular, do it, start yourself, and the more do that, the more this becomes a common trend, and things are going to move faster.
Love it. Alexis?
Oh, tough one. But I have to say something out right now from the top of my mind. I will say information as is life, sharing is pura vida. Pura vida is a common phrase in my country that also symbolizes something that is nice, something that is good, something that is enjoyable. And in my case, in the personal side, sharing with people is very important for me. And in my professional setup or in my philosophy, sharing information is also very good.
Awesome.
So that is one of the things I will put, but I gotta think it a bit longer for the next time I get into this question.
That's perfect. Yeah, awesome. Where can people find you online? Maybe that's as the parting gift here for everyone.
Yeah, look for twinu, twinu.com. One important aspect what we mentioned today in the morning, there's a coin out there that's not us. Yeah? Yeah. So sometimes we get a reach out for that. So we are not, we don't have a coin. We're not done an ICO. We're not that kind of blockchain startup. So we're not in the DeFi space. That's maybe we are on the, as you said, like real world use cases with physical assets. Yeah? And you can find it with twinu on the social media platforms and on twinu.com.
And I can find you on LinkedIn also?
On LinkedIn too, yeah. Obviously connect with me, engage with me, talk to us if you're interested in what we do, if you do something similar, if you work in that space, like we're a lot in the circularity community also now, and always happy. This is something that can only work together. That's one of these nice topics where even brands and producers can talk to each other, because it's not like you're not like talking about I mean, it's about the climate, and it's only going to work if we all work together and collaborate and exchange. And I also see that many companies do that. They do workshops together, even with their direct competitors, and that's a big advantage. It makes it way more fun to work on a topic like that.
Cool. Alexis?
Just to reiterate, if the website says Twino and it has a dog and a rocket, it's not us.
Yeah, so there's a cryptocurrency that's not you guys, but twinu.com. You're also on Twitter or
Correct.
on LinkedIn?
I'm also on Twitter and in LinkedIn, and happy to share and happy to exchange on any topic from Web3, blockchain, semantic web, open data. I can talk for hours about those topics.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Bernhard.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And now
pleasure.
back to Murphy. He's sleeping.
Yeah, our fourth co-founder, the dog, is sleeping by
and now he's waking up again. Perfect. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Yeah.